Hi, thanks so much for joining in. This is Your Money Matters on NDTV Profit, and my name is Alex Matthew. We speak about everything personal finance related, and we speak about things that you can use. Now, today I'd like to talk about tax and also the approach that you should have to managing your money and the transfer of money if you are non-resident Indian. And if you intend to be, that's important as well. Joining me is Mayur Shah, who's a tax partner at EY India. Mayur, thanks as always for taking the time. Pleasure having you on the show. Before we get into some of the behavior or some of the do's and don'ts for a non-resident Indian, I do want to ask you, I've seen a lot of headlines, I've seen a lot of conversations about this. It's soon becoming tax filing season, and the documents that you need in order to file your returns is going to come through very soon. But people are saying don't rush into filing your returns. Why are they saying that?
There are a couple of myths which are being there. That when you file at the end of, or just when the season is ending or when the last due date is coming up, a lot of returns are getting uploaded, so selection of your return for scrutiny to that extent gets diluted.
Is that true?
So yeah, I mean, whether it's true or not is just a myth, as I said.
Right.
Right. So, what happens is that now the return scrutiny system is all electronic driven, and it's just decided by the random and some criteria being picked up through online mechanism. Now, therefore, it does not mean that, when you have filed along with all of them, it really helps. On the contrary, it do create a challenge when there is a rush to file the return at the when the deadline is coming nearby. Many a times you may not be able to file the return because of the rush which is there on the portal. And therefore, it is advisable that we file as and when it is appropriate. We shouldn't wait till the last minute.
Yeah, it's an important point, and thanks for clarifying that. But let's jump straight into why we're having this conversation. And Mayur, really, the seed of this conversation is this big, beautiful bill that is being proposed by Donald Trump. It got me thinking that if this 5% levy on international transfers by non-citizens, which effectively would be non-resident Indians as well, this would affect them quite dramatically. And the question is, does this exist anywhere else in the world? And what are the implications for NRIs?
So let me answer this. We have asked many questions within this. So first, let's look at it whether globally how is it being done. So I don't think any country is still levying any tax on remittance. However, we have seen many countries levy immigration tax, which is not equivalent to remittance tax. Now, if we look at India, when you remit under LRS, you pay TCS, which is still creditable against the taxes which you are required to pay on your income. So, whether it is can you call it as a remittance tax equivalent to what TCS we pay in India? I mean, somewhat it is relevant, but we really need to see that how does it work in US? That if you have remitted, money out of US, then this tax is a sunk cost, or it is still creditable against the US taxes which when a person is required to pay. If that being the case, then it is like what we are saying, we have TCS. But if it is not the same, then there will be a challenge because, whether under a double taxation avoidance agreement, where a person is a resident of home country, then whether home country will give credit for such taxes paid or not, or is it going to be a permanent sunk cost, needs to be seen.
Okay. I think that last point is important, the tagging of whether you are a resident of home country. There is a tagging of resident but not ordinarily resident. Is that relevant in this context?
It is relevant. What we have to really see is that there are two residencies which we need to examine. One is under domestic tax law of India, a residency which will be based on physical presence or citizenship. And there is a criteria of a resident and ordinarily resident, where you are subject to tax in India on your global income. And second is that resident but not ordinarily resident. When you are resident and not ordinarily resident, your income which is accrued or arising outside India and also received outside India is not subject to tax in India. And in that case, claiming any credit in India is going to be a very challenging task because no income is getting taxed. How would you claim credit for taxes paid in US? So when a person is resident but not ordinary resident, it would normally tantamount to a sunk cost.
Okay, so what is the preferable manner of dealing with this current situation? Of course, we would have to wait for this bill to be passed into law and to read the fine print to see what exactly comes to pass. But while we're on the subject of transfer of money by a non-resident Indian into India, which a lot of people do. We have so many of our IT workers that go to the US, earn salaries there, and they transfer money home, of course. So what are the do's and don'ts from that perspective?
See, generally now, what I foresee is that the IT professionals who are going for a short-term duration may want to receive salary in India by virtue of that, and therefore there is no question of remittance required from that part. That may be an option people will look out for. But certainly, if we need to really look at the fine print and then ascertain what is the right way of approaching this. If it is creditable against the US taxes to be paid, then I think it is easy to go with. And it will be equivalent to TCS under LRS as far as we are concerned. So this is how I view it, this remittance tax as.
Okay, I understand. But let's move beyond that as well and talk about the practice of sending money home or bringing money into India from overseas. What are the rules that must be followed? What are the do's and don'ts from the perspective of an NRI? And also, we'll then come to taking money out from India. Assuming you're a resident, then you have to follow the liberalized remittance scheme. So we'll come to that in a bit. But first on bringing money into India from abroad.
And that's a very good question. A lot of mistakes are being made when people are remitting money into India. Couple of things which you just need to note is that when the money is remitted, remitter has to be very, very clear that whether this money has been sent for current account transactions or capital account transactions. When I say current account transactions, simply the way we understand that any money which is being sent for incurring any expenditure or giving any gift, then those will be construed to be a current account transactions. And there is no money which will be repatriated out of that fund outside India. But when we are really looking at capital account transactions, one has to be extremely clear whether we are sending money on a repatriable basis or on a non-repatriable basis. Because when you are submitting your request for remittance to India, you are required to mention that on your instructions to the bankers in your host country. Let us say somebody is remitting money from US, then the banker in US should be instructed appropriately that money in India is being sent on a repaid basis for this purpose, and purpose has to be articulated very clearly. In absence of that, there will be a bit of challenge from Indian perspective to repatriate money and to obtain appropriate certificate from the Indian bankers the money has been received for what purpose and whether it is repatriable or non-repatriable. So that is the first part which one really needs to look at it. When the money is sent for on a repaid basis, there are investment which has to be made in accordance with the FDI guidelines for debt as well as non-debt instruments. And when you are sending some money, one has to be very, very clear that there are restricted or prohibited sectors, and the investments cannot be made in those sectors. Secondly, when you are opening a demat account or any custodian account, you have to make sure that custodian is putting as a repatriable account or a non-repatriable account, as the case may be. If money has been sent for repatriable purposes and the same has not been recorded in your demat account as a repatriable investment, money thereafter cannot be repatriated outside India.
Okay.
And that becomes a bit of challenge, and we have seen this error being made by many NRIs. And then going to RBI for seeking approval and to demonstrate that it was being made on a repaid basis becomes a bit of a challenge. Right. Second thing, one has to be very clear the investment is made under FDI. Then there are several conditions needs to be fulfilled. Or if you are investing and in relation to portfolio investment or foreign portfolio investment, then there are different guidelines and rules which will apply. And one must adhere to that for it to be repatriable. Second thing, there are many cases when non-repatriable investments being made in India, such as somebody wants to do a business as a partner in a partnership or a proprietary concern, then the money will be remitted in India on a non-repaid basis. And there are certain conditions which needs to be fulfilled. Now, couple of things over there, when you are repatriating money, many a times a person may use NRE account. In that case, you will not get any remittance certificate or anything, but just money from NRE account. And those, while giving the instructions for transfer of money from NRE accounts to any other person or for any investment, needs to be made sure that it is on a repaid, non-repaid, being very clearly outlined to the instructions to be given to the Indian bankers, so that appropriate things can be carried out.
Yeah. So the intent has to be very, very clear, and the declaration of what the funds are going to be used for has to be very, very certain. My interpretation of what you've said is that there are a few rules that govern what can be repatriated. And there are basically certain rules that govern whether money that is being sent based on what it's being used for. If it's non-repatriable, then you cannot take money out of India after it has taken place. So you've established that. I just want to clarify one thing, which is that if you're investing, for example, in the stock market, and we get a lot of calls over the course of the day from people sitting in Dubai or people sitting even in France and certain other places where they're talking about investing in equity in India, that would come under the foreign portfolio investor rules?
You are absolutely right. That will be classified as foreign portfolio investment. And you have to go to the broker which will obtain license from SEBI as a portfolio investor, and basis that the investment can be made.
Okay. Let's run through a couple of these things as well, because a lot of people now are investing overseas. They're using the LRS route or the liberalized remittance scheme route. So any money that has to be taken outside India as a resident, you are governed by the liberalized remittance scheme, which allows you to take as an individual $250,000 in any given financial year out of the country. But are there any rules that you should be mindful of with regard to the use of this money, Mayur, that people often forget about?
Correct. And you are absolutely right that under LRS, money cannot be used for everything. It has a restricted use. And one has to be very careful when they are making investment abroad under LRS. Now, what are the things which generally needs to be taken care of when you are really investing abroad? What you have to ensure is that you are not utilizing this money for gifting to any other resident, because that's the often mistakes which are being made by the various people. Secondly, you cannot utilize this money for purchase of lotteries or any prescribed magazines in that sense. And you cannot use this money for putting margin money for making or margin calls in overseas stock exchanges. Remittance cannot be used or utilized for purchasing foreign convertible corporate bonds. And you cannot trade in foreign currency when the money is remitted through LRS. So there are a couple of more which are items which are there which it cannot be utilized for, and especially it cannot be utilized for real estate sector as well. So far as when anybody is making investment in for purchase of property, it can make, but they cannot deal in real estate properties.
Okay. Okay. I just want to round out this conversation, Mayur, by asking you about that. And we've spoken more about, I understand, we've spoken more about transfer of money or remittance than we have about taxes. But let's address the tax aspect as well, because as we've established, a lot of non-resident Indians do have investments in India, and they will be subject to the tax laws in the form of capital gains tax as well. So what are the key rules to follow for these individuals that are non-resident Indians, particularly, for example, we're talking about real estate that they have either inherited or acquired before they left, if they are looking to sell, some of these aspects?
Yeah. Couple of questions you have raised, and I'll just answer one by one. First is that, when any immovable property which is being purchased by any non-resident, the idea of when you purchase an immovable property, there are rules in relation to purchase of immovable property and remittance from India. And one has to comply with it. As far as tax is concerned, it will be like a normal resident Indian. Purchase of property and sale of property, it will be taxed in the same manner and like. And there is no difference as such. So, when it is being held for more than 2 years, it will result into a long-term capital gain. And if it is less than 2 years, then it will result into a short-term capital gain. And a long-term capital gain will be taxed at 12.5%. And if it is short-term, then at a normal rate. Now, as far as property which is purchased before July 24, the option is there that, one can calculate capital gain applying the indexation method. However, the loss will never be allowed to be carried forward. At the same time, income tax rate will be at the rate of 20%. And, another aspect which you spoke about is that if any property is inherited, the tax system for that will work on a little different basis. What one has to consider is not the purchase cost for calculating capital gain, but one has to consider the original cost of acquisition by the earlier owner, and basis that a capital gain needs to be calculated. If in absence of that, one can consider market value, fair market value as on 1st April 2001. And that basis that one can calculate capital gain tax.
Got it. All right. So we've established quite a few things, and I understand that we've covered quite a bit of ground. If anybody's tuning in and they've got specific questions, please do write to us on any one of our social media platforms. You can even comment in the comment section, and our team will pass on the message to Mayur, and I'm sure that we can have a conversation down the road as well. Mayur, thanks so much as always for taking the time. Pleasure having you.
Thank you. Have a nice day.